What's up, Digidestins? This is Kyle D, better known as RideMyAvatar, and today we are going to talk about none other than the prediction of the restriction list. The restriction list will be announced on the Friday, the 23rd, I think it is, of this month, and then will be in effect for August 31st. This is for Japan right now, but we always follow suit. There is no way in hell we are not having the same day restriction list announcements. I don't know when we'll get it, but I told you guys end of summer is when we get it, and it is time. So without further ado, let's dive in the video and talk about it. So as it stands currently, these are kind of like the restriction list going into effect. First off, we did have a pairing band, which means you can't play XYZ with each other as long as you have one of the component cards. Makes sense, not a terrible idea. Then we have post restrictions, things that were banned that are sitting at like Mega Digimon Fusion, and we had Bokomon, we had Apocally, we had Gabumon, Garurumon X, Gabumon X, Anubis, Geo Gray, Mach Galgamon, Gabumons. All these cards left and right have been hit in some capacity, and for good reasons, to help prevent decks from formats becoming extremely stale and one-sided of overuse and abuse. So things that I want to take a look here is some things could possibly come off the list. Do I think one of them is going to be Shoutmon ×4? Probably not. With the new amount of support that's coming through, I don't think the deck will have space to put in more Shoutmon ×4s. If they're really going to be that advantageous here, bringing ×4 back into the fray can be a possibility. I think this is a 3% chance of coming back, but it does have a shot, especially if you want to have a new deck shiny flair. This might be your way of boosting the deck into competitive if the new support isn't good enough to do so. Then you have Jet Sylphie here. I think Jet Sylphie is going to stay there long term. I don't see her coming off the list anytime soon. This is probably a 0.01% chance of it coming off the list. I think, if anything, if they're really going to try to push hybrid shenanigans, she comes off the list, but I don't think so, to be honest with you. We have Doro Gray possibly coming off the list. I think a lot of decks, even now, are really much have a lot of protections, abilities that go crazy ham. I think now you could possibly bring off Doro Gray without any issues, but I know it was originally for its protection skills and stuff like that, but so many decks now have these one-turn protections. I think Doro Gray could possibly come off the list at this point. I know people would be all upset because then Alphamon OTK just comes back, but I don't even think that's a threat. We have so many other bigger, beefier bodies that have protection skills that are really scary to deal with. I think this card could come off the list. I see this card coming off the list, to be straight honest with you. Purple getting this card here. The only reason why it was restricted in the first place was because of the Eismon scatter mode plus Eismon spam to Chimeramon shenanigans, which was the big scary thing. And right now, both of these Eismons are together on the list. But to be honest with you, this Eismon could definitely come off the list because now your scatter mode isn't as consistent to get this in there because you don't have enough scatter modes to really feel it. So, and that Chimeramon shenanigans, same with, guess who was doing that too? Jessmon. The reason why both Eismon and Savior Hawk got hit was because of Chimeramon shenanigans. Well, I think Eismon BT7 has a good shot of coming off the list at this point. There's nothing wrong with it. In a game sense, I think this card can definitely come off, giving Purple a returning toy that they kind of need. Then I think we could talk about one other card here. I think Calling from Darkness staying at the percentage. Grand Kuwagamon definitely probably stays. Where Garurumon, if you want to give Metal Garurumon a shot to really be competitive, you probably bring this card back. But at the moment, they need to bring something new. Then you have Geo Greymon X Antibody here. I think this card has a decent chance of coming back. The reason why I'm saying this right now, oh man, the one cost evolve shenanigans. Almost every deck in the format kind of does that now, or evolves for free. I think even though it had its protection skill, Greymon's not a big enough threat anymore unless they're giving a bunch of new support that allows you to do something with it. I think Greymon X Antibody could definitely come off this list, and it wouldn't impact the meta that extreme. Yes, it just swaps the decks back to 4 this mother effer, but I think this is just fine to come off the list. I don't see it as much of a problem because we have so many. Oh, I evolve for 1, I evolve for 0, I evolve for nothing, I evolve for 2. You know, stuff like that does matter and add up eventually. And yes, that was their biggest threat, was this card really doing it. And to be honest with you, I think he can come off the list comfortably. Itmons, no, the aggro TK shenanigans that just can happen, especially with Death Slinger and stuff. I can't see Itmon coming off the list just because milling is just ridiculous sometimes. And it's just big Russian roulette that sometimes you'll end up killing your opponent. And, you know, they want to make sure you have interactions. Gabumons, with the amount of hits to the Gabumon X Antibody line, maybe a few of these boys can come off, but I know that they're just trying to make people play. I think maybe this could definitely come off just because of the, for its on deletion draw, then, you know, do what you need to. But I don't know, it's tough to make a call here. I think this one could, both of them could probably come off the list comfortably, to be honest with you. But if they're just going to keep the restriction as is for right now, that's kind of where it's going at. But now let's get into what my kind of predictions are. I know I wanted to talk about unrestricting because that is a possibility and it has hit the table at least once. So next, let's talk about the first thing I want to talk about. And everybody knows the elephant in the room here. Ukumon is one of the biggest ones you have to, or Ukumon, whatever the hell this little parasite looking monstrosity is. Either you're going to hit one of them to 1 and people are going to get pissed off, or you do a simpler restriction where they both can still exist simultaneously. And that is a, what? The, dang it. What is it called? Pair restriction. So if you do a pair restriction on these two, this allows decks to still be able to use the Ukumon that they need while having access to being able to go like, hey, I still need to be able to dig deep, but I can't have just one of this guy, you know, the one that's going to look at the top X and you grab a Tamer or Digimon. Really important piece. I mean, I need to play 4 of this. But on the other hand, you don't need to play 8 copies of this card. I think the 8 copies is just ridiculous, especially because of how things are working with the decks. They're just way too fast because they just keep chaining off. This Ukumon will gain you a memory and the hatching of the egg. That means 5 of your eggs hatch faster than your opponent gets to. And being able to do that is really strong, and especially with the combination of Louis. And yes, that could be another card on the list as well to help slow this deck down, but most lists only play it at 1 anyway, so why put a restriction on it? But with the Ukumon, I think a choice restriction here just to slow it down just a tad bit. I know that you have players that want to say, oh, Big Uku. Big Uku is just a dead deck anyway. You guys can't use this as, well, you're going to kill the one deck it needs to play it in. You can't make this really convoluted bullshit of, you know, if you play Big Uku, then everybody's going to play Big Uku. And I mean, it would be really weird to do that. So instead of just outright killing the cards, I think being a choice restriction between the two, and I've been saying this from the beginning, I think this will slow down the Numon deck. This will slow down the Ancient Garu deck. This will slow down any deck that's just been like Red Hybrid as well, that's been spamming the daylights out of this. I think slowing down this engine and just making it like, oh, you can only play 4 of this in the deck or 4 of this in the deck, really makes it healthier. I think makes more sense at the end of the day without killing the card. Next card, I think this is where we kind of know they're already watching this. Mother D Reaper and Shoto are definitely going to be hit. There's no reason why they wouldn't have a block restriction, you know, the choice restriction here. You know, Shoto, you can't play Mother D Reaper. Plain and simple. I think the idea of 15,000 DP is already showing to be more problems than good. I think because a lot of decks can't naturally out this, and having Mother D Reaper just stare you down, doing the same thing as Magna X for just like, oh yeah, Mother D Reaper comes up, play Shoto. Oh cool, Shoto's just gonna sit here and do it. We don't have enough Tamer Destruction in formats even at a low enough cost to kill Shoto as consistently, so I think this combination needs to go. Now let's get into colors themselves. I'm gonna be straight honest with you. Red is kinda is fine here. Red, purple, green have nothing on the list that I would say hit. But let's get into another possible choice restriction. I don't know. Like with the introduction of Flamemon, Magna X goes to blue, but yellow Magna X antibody still is a threat in itself. It is bricky, a little less consistent, and a lot of people just say, well, you're just going to force the Magna players to go play the blue version. That's fine. I feel like that deck is a little more manageable at the end of the day because, you know, as long as you have the Pata, the Emissary, you have so many ways of just activating Magna X's skill in your own yellow colorization that it gets ridiculous. Oh, let me talk about one other card that I think probably is going to get hit. I forgot to put this card here. So, this. But let's get at it. First off, if anything, if you're just going to slap the Patamon deck with Magna X antibody, this is what you do. You choice restrict them as well. Makes the most sense. If you want to really kill any future, you know, yellow vaccine list, you hit Pata to 1. Then that makes the consistency engine of this a lot weaker. You know the drill here. They're not going to be able to free Digi-Evolution as consistently. Or you go for a hit on Emissary Hope, slows it down just a tad bit. I think this now lets you have access to some shenanigans here, but I think Heaven's Judgment is a card that should be probably restricted to 1 at this point. We have way too many 3-color Digimon in game now that this card is just becoming stupidly strong. Being able to answer threats and just kill off and having multiple copies of it is just getting ridiculous. I wouldn't be surprised to even just go the route of banning the card outright existence, just because the 3 colors is now just being how you breathe. And I hate the concept of a card that just basically says, I wipe your board at least minimum 3 cards without breaking a sweat. I think that's a bigger issue than anything else. I think Heaven's Judgment needs to go in every capacity. And then another card, Armor. Let's go to it. Where is it? Awakening of the Golden Knight is another possibility to help slow down the shenanigans with Magnamon X antibody. I mean, yes, we have potentials of doing things with this one's just going to be able to evolve for free. If you just really want to shit on Magna X antibody, this is what you do. You shit on its parade right here. You hit Awakening of the Golden and you make Heaven's Judgment gone. That slows it down. Yes, the yellow kind of is annoying, but without Awakening being consistent enough, you can't really skip evolution with this. And that is another possibility. But at the end of the day, I think Emissary just needs to go. And Pata needs to kind of be a choice restriction with Magna, brings it into the blue fray. And with that, you kind of can play around a little bit better, which is what we kind of want to see. I think that's really important, but at the end of the day, that's kind of how this looks. Now let's get into blue. I think Mirage Galga it's overstayed its welcome. I think it's time to hit something with this deck. Again, it's either you ban Thomas outright so they can't unsuspend, because even the most recent Grand Prixes or whatever, the most recent big event in Asia right now showed that they're playing only 2 of this Thomas, and the deck is still getting like top 4s. And it's either you hit the Thomas to nothing and remove it from the fray so they don't get a free unsuspend, and makes the burst evolution a lot harder to achieve, or you go for Mirage itself. Being able to gain that extra memory has been a little bit more of a hassle, because again, when you can naturally just bounce the pain in the rear that's going to negate it, this is what's becoming the issue, is that you bounce something, you trash something on your opponent's security stack by adding it to hand. You don't really care. This fuels your own effects. This thing does everything the deck wanted and more. But I think if we're going to bring this card to 1, I think this would be the way of basically making the deck really not as a problem, because most lists are just playing Mirage Galga at a full set, and then you're not going to want to play anything else because Mirage Galga is just that good. If you really want to hit Imperial Dramon, Imperial Dramon isn't doing as well in the current format. Just decks are a lot faster than it. I mean, this card is great if you want to just slap it on the wrist so that it kind of just falls down and kind of just gets to the even playing field. You get Return of the Ancestors. I really doubt you hit anything else in the list. Someone else could probably tell me otherwise, but at this point, I think Return of the Ancestors to 1 is just a good small slap on the wrist that'll allow your deck to still play, but at least brings the Imperial Dramon deck from being overly dominant to a little bit more fair and balanced. But I think that's the problem, because you don't know how much of a domino effect will bring this deck forwards. Then let's talk about the final big boy in the room. So Numon is, everybody's asking for a hit to something in Numon. Well, let's take this into account here. There's several key pieces you can go about slowing this deck down. I don't think hitting an egg is the right route, but we need to hit cards like Numon X, Mumsymon X, or Garymon. So I'm going to be straight honest with you. If you hit the Ukus and bring them, or Okomons down, you're going to be fine. I think the deck becomes manageable. It's not, I played it with just 1. The deck becomes basically its BT14 counterpart, and it's not as scary. I think having this into your thought process here, I think if you hit Numon X, it's not really going to matter as much, because they're just going to cycle the 1, and they can easily do that. Mumsymon X is outright killing the deck. I think if you set this to 1, the deck dies, because there isn't a way of consistently getting this back in its own list, and that's a big problem. And Mumsymon X, yes, it is a mid-ranged tempo card. It's really important not to overextend with it. It can be punished for overextending your board with Crimson Flares and Crimson Blaze and other shenanigans. But if you really need to slow this deck down, you hit Gary. Why am I saying this? Well, if you hit Gary, this now makes it so you don't have enough consistency of getting Platinum Nume and trash naturally, because Gary is what kind of does that turn 1 setup of play Gary, trash Platinum Nume, draw 2 cards, then follow up Numon X Antibody the next turn, and then they can just swing in, hopefully getting the Platinum Nume out. That if you hit Gary, it slows the deck down by clicks. I think this would be the lightest of the hits and be the fairest of the hits if you really needed to hit Nume. I don't think hitting the X Antibody and Mumsymon X Antibody would do. This would be a light. This would slow the deck down without killing it if you don't hit the Ukus. This is basically just small slap on the wrist. Okay, we're just hitting this. This is basically if you want to kill the deck. This is just basically to slow the deck down by clicks if Ukumon's not in your deck. If Uku is still at a full play set. But I think this is where it's balancing, and I think this would actually make the most sense. I know people are just saying Nume, Mumsy X need to go, but I think fair is fair here. But all in all, guys, hopefully you enjoyed the video. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll catch you next one. Peace.